Um, basically, what I've learned is usually you're supposed to start these things off and talk about how small and slow and friendly you are as a football team, and how you're probably not going to win a game. And you're supposed to pour mouth a little bit so the expectations are really low. But I'm a little bit different. I think this point of the season, if you're not fired up about your team and where you're at leading into the first week of the season, then you're probably not going to be very fired up, um, regardless, of how the season goes. So really looking forward to these. I tell you, we've had what seems like an awfully long camp, especially this being my first year. You hate to wish time away, but I sure have been waiting for Thursday for a long time, and just ready to start beating up on other people, I guess. Our kids, they've gotten to the point where our defense knows our offensive calls, and our offense knows our defensive calls, and they know what blitz is coming, and so on and so forth. And so it's finally nice to get into game week preparations and start looking at other people's defenses and other people's offenses, and give these guys a chance to go out there and celebrate. We talk about with our football team that game day is a celebration, and that's how we want to treat it. That coaches aren't coaching on game day; we're just adjusting if needed. But if we've done our job throughout game week, we should go up in the stands and drink Coke and eat popcorn during the game, and let them just go play. And hopefully we can do that on Thursday. And all of the Saturdays following that if we've done our job through the week. So just very excited to get these guys to game day and to that celebration, and watch them go out there.
Coach, your latest on Mark Dotson, what's the status?
Still waiting. Obviously, we've sent all of the paperwork off last week that needed to be sent off. We've got some letters of recommendations, some letters of situation and things like that. So now we're just kind of waiting. The NCAA, they're a lot like the government. You just have to sit and wait. They do things on their own time. And so hopefully, with this being Monday, and hopefully with us playing on a Thursday, that kind of tends to push that process forward a little bit with those guys. So I'm hoping that either today or tomorrow that we'll have a final word, so that in his, for his situation, we can figure out exactly how we want to rep him and what we're going to do with him. As far as, he's still got a redshirt year, and that was the reason why I took him, was because, worst case scenario, if they don't clear him, I could still redshirt him this year. But obviously, that's not Plan A. That's Plan B. So we're still waiting.
Heard this morning that you guys had a clearance on Tony May's offensive line. That's got a pretty beefy offensive line there. Maybe talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Tony Mays is a guy from Memphis that we got to transfer right there at the last, may have been the last day of camp, right? Right before school started. He's a 6'4", 6'5", 295-pound guy. Very agile, very athletic to be that size. Very strong, and he's one of those guys. I mean, when he walks into the room, you'll know who Tony Mays is, or you'll at least say, man, that's probably Tony, because he's every bit of that size. So, he's still feeling his way a little bit with the schemes and the term, not so much the schemes, just the terminology. If you say go right, sometimes he'll go left, and things like that. But it gives us a chance to move some guys and shuffle some guys around up front to make sure that we're playing our best five, because at the end of the day, that's what you want to do at every position. You're trying to put your best 11 on the field, and then figure out who your best 22 is, so that you've got your ones and your twos, set. So it's a depth thing. With him coming in, it allowed us to get a little bit more depth up there on the line of scrimmage.
How much of an advantage is it going to be for the Racers to have looks like 5 guys at 297 or more on the line?
I hope a lot. You don't ever go off size alone. I've got a theory about big guys, the big soft guys that you see that never hit anybody, and they're big marshmallows. I think mamas tend to do that a lot. No offense, they're mamas, because their whole life they grow up and mama says, hey, don't pick on him, he's littler than you, don't beat up on him, he's pick on somebody your own size, and they can't ever find anybody that's their own size. So you got to be careful. A lot of times you'll get big 300-pound softies But obviously, you know, we feel good about where we're at just from a size standpoint. I've talked about that through our signing class. You know, I thought that was the biggest thing that we did was we got some length and some girth, both on the lines of scrimmage and then also at some linebacker spots and DB spots and so on and so forth. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Tell us about turning Elijah Daniel loose in this first game
Well, you know, hopefully, I'm telling you now, at practice when you turn him loose, you better not have a red shirt around with those quarterbacks because he has no stop button or pause button. I joke with the quarterbacks, I'm gonna have to put him in like pink or purple or something like that, just because I think when he sees red, it just intensifies the situation. And I've probably yelled at him about 9 times. Bless his heart, I feel like I never tell him anything good. All I tell him is stay off the quarterback. Even when I see him in the hallway, I say, "Hey, Elijah, how you doing? Stay off the quarterback." So, you know, hopefully when we get to game day, you know, and the lights come on, he's shown it before, you know, at the biggest level there is. And so obviously we're excited to get him on the grass and kind of turn him loose and watch him go play. You know, I will say that that's probably where I feel the best as far as an improvement standpoint. Just watching the defensive front, watching the way that they move and their twitchiness and ball get off and things like that. I think that we've really improved there, and I'm not so sure it's not from guys like Elijah and Demetrius Mason, who you talked to earlier, kind of increasing their level of play as a unit. You know, when those guys go out there and they do something, and those other guys get to see them do it that way. I think that it's just increased the play of that unit as a whole, so I'm very excited to see those guys.
We've seen a lot of changes with the staff, solid new set of athletes, and things like that, but what's the biggest change we can expect to see as a whole on the field that's going to produce wins?
You know, I don't know. Obviously, after last season, I hope there's a lot more W's in the W column. You know, but I don't know. I think obviously there's a couple of keys I think that's gonna you know, produce wins, and the biggest for us is turnover. We've got to do better in the turnover margin. Last year, I think that we were one of the worst in the country in turnover margin, meaning our offense gave it away too much and our defense never took it. So we've got to improve it on that, and I think, you know, I've said this back in spring all the way through the whole off season that I really wanted our physicality to improve. You know, I wanted a lot of hats to the ball, and when we got there, I wanted to make sure that those hats were very angry. And we've changed some things up with the way that we practice and how much we allow those guys to hit on one another, and just so they can kind of get a taste of that, because I think it's just as good for the offense as it is for the defense when you allow them a couple of periods during practice to go bang on one another, just because you know, a ball carrier, if the first time he ever gets jolted is on a Saturday, there's a good chance that ball is going to come loose, which again doesn't do well for your turnover margin. So I think that you know, the changes that we made, hopefully I want to see some improvement in those two areas from a physicality standpoint and turnover standpoint.
Heading into the season, you guys are pretty healthy, or just what's your situation?
Yeah, overall pretty healthy. You know, we've got bumps and bruises and hamstrings and groins and all of that kind of stuff, but nothing too major. You know, we've done a good job, I think, for the most part of kind of feeling the kids out and where they're at. And when they got tired, we shut them down for a little bit, and when they refreshed, then we put it on them and made them sweat a little bit. So you know, overall, nothing too major. Nothing that's you know, season ending or career ending or anything like that. We got a couple of guys in limbo that we're just waiting on a cast or something like that.
He's one of those guys, Janowski Davis. I don't see him on the depth chart at all.
No, Janowski, he's just going to sit this first game. You know, he's in violation of some team rules for the first week, so he's going to he'll sit out, and then he'll be ready to rock and roll the second week. As well as Corey Gammon, you're not going to see him either. Those two guys, they will be out for this week, both for violation of team rules, but both of them will be back second week.
What do you know about Kentucky Wesleyan?
You know, I'll tell you this: these type games are probably a coach's nightmare, just from the standpoint of, you know, your kids, they all think they're superheroes, and they when you show them the film, you know, you get different emotions. Some of the kids, they go, oh, well, they're NAI or they're Division II or they're this and they're that and all that kind of stuff. And then as a coach, you're sitting there watching the film and you're going, man, this number 91 on defense, they got a little lineman. It's the same one they had last year. He's a linebacker. He plays a little defense. He'll move up to an defensive end spot. They move him everywhere because he's a really good player. And then offensively, they've got 2 receivers. I know one of them, though, is number 4. What's the kid's name? Number 4, big tall thing. He's there. Yeah, and he's a preseason All-American candidate, and I'm gonna tell you what. Now, I'd like to have him on my football team. So, you know, I think that we've got to do a good job. We've kind of come up with the theme of focus for this week. You know, each week throughout the season we'll have a theme, and this week I wanted it to be focused because I wanted our kids to remain very focused on the task at hand, and not take these guys too lightly because they do some really good stuff offensively. They do some really good stuff defensively, schematic-wise, especially with their front and just ID in their front. And then they've got good players. They really do have really good players.